5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is BSS Sports.
Fires to the end zone. It's caught. It's Greg Lewis. Touchdown.
Brooks with one. Lets it fly at the horn. It's gone.
Here's Crosby with a burst of speed up the middle. Gets open. Scores.
A grand slam for A-Rod.
Pure genius from David Beckham.
And it's in. Thierry Henry with a bullet.
Touchdown.
With Thomas Brooks, Steve Schill, and Trevor Struthers. Only on 91X.
Good afternoon. My name is Steven Schill, here with Trevor Struthers. Unfortunately, Thomas is not with us again today, but we got a lot to talk about. And first off, Colin Kaepernick. If you do not know who he is, he's the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, who is getting an ungodly amount of flack for not standing for the anthem. And if you were any other individual in the world and you didn't stand up for it, it probably wouldn't matter, but because you are a sports player at an event and being paid hundreds of millions of dollars, we get to talk about it, and that's what, the good old sports are about. Now, personally, I don't really know how I feel about this because he's saying it's about a political kind of statement, how, people are being suppressed and all this other stuff. And look, he's not wrong, but the way that you go about doing it is kind of wrong. And being a guy who's getting paid millions of dollars just to play a game where you throw a ball and then saying that he's being oppressed, I don't know. I seem to take an issue with this. Trevor, what's your take on it?
It's a little strange, right? Because, this kind of thing just comes out of the blue in the middle of the preseason, or just as it's getting underway. But out of all the people you thought in sports would try to make a political statement, I don't think Colin Kaepernick would reach the top 100. But this is a guy too, though, that in a way his job's not exactly the most safest thing in the world. San Francisco is at an interesting point in time.
It seems like he's trying to get fired though. Why would you do that?
Clearly he's trying to make a statement, and you could make a statement. Let's face it, he plays for the San Francisco 49ers. You can make a statement talking to the media. You don't have to do something not standing for the national anthem. But obviously, he wants to make this huge political statement that I think he was saying that African Americans are being suppressed in America today, or something along the lines of that. So, if you listen to Donald Trump, apparently, Americans aren't African Americans aren't in the best state right now. But that's Donald Trump trying to run for the presidency, and he's going to say anything he can to try to get in the White House. But bringing it back to Colin Kaepernick, I really don't know what to make of it because, like I said, it just comes out of the blue like this, and it's a bizarre story because I don't know if we've ever really had a situation like this where a player has refused to stand for the national anthem, and apparently he said he's going to continue to do this, at least for the time being. So, it's an easy way to make a lot of enemies. I don't know if that's exactly what he wants to do. I don't know how the 49ers management are looking at this, but it's kind of like hot garbage at this point. You're going to maybe have to do something, but what can you do? You kind of need him on your team right now because who else is going to be your quarterback? It's not like this is a receiver or, it's not even like it's some sort of defensive lineman or offensive lineman. This is your quarterback. This is your starting quarterback. And it's not just some guy that you can throw out to the wolves. But like I said, Colin Kaepernick, he's a name. But he's a guy that definitely needs to try to turn around what's happened over the last little bit with his play on the field, and I don't know if this is something that's going to help.
Well, there's such a difference if you think about it. Usain Bolt, there's videos of him after he won one of the medals that he got, because he has a lot of them, and then the U.S. national anthem was playing in the background. He was right in the middle of an interview. He stopped and said, hey, it's an anthem, and then he stood there with the reporter and showed respect, because, respect is a very loose term, it seems like, in this day and age, and national anthems is one thing that everybody seems to mutually agree on. You stand up and you show respect, because it means multiple different things. Freedom, respect to people that have passed away for defending it, and feel free to go ahead.
One thing I will mention is that one thing that's not, completely agreed upon is that national anthems should even be played at sporting events, and that's a debate that's been had for a while now. And I know people that are well-respected in media that feel like that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't play national anthems at sporting events. It's a political thing, and why try to bring politics into sports like that? You don't really need it.
Well, they don't do it at concerts or anywhere else, so you're right.
Yeah, they don't do it at concerts or anything like that. That's obviously, like, if you want to compare a sporting event to something, a concert might be that, right? So, yeah, I mean, like, you don't want to try to politicize anything like a sporting event, but meanwhile, we do this anthem thing, and sometimes at the Olympics or an international tournament, it can be used as a celebratory thing. And that maybe, I could have more debate for that being there. But the fact that we do national anthems just for the sake of it, it seems like before games, we kind of don't need them.
I agree. I never even thought of it like that. I've heard the argument before, but I do agree. It does seem kind of, not exactly the place for it. The NFL season is just around the corner, and Trevor, I got you a part of the fantasy draft this time around, and you ended up with the first pick. I don't know how, but you ended up with the first pick. And
I don't know how either.
Let's say you're listening right now and you've never done a fantasy draft before. It doesn't matter whether you really know sports or not. It helps, but at the same time, if you aren't really a huge sport fan of a certain, sport, like let's say it's hockey, basketball, or football, you can do the fantasy draft, and then I think you'll be more inclined to watch your favorite, or at least the players that you drafted. Trevor, do you think once the season rolls around for the NFL that you're going to feel any kind of difference while watching the NFL?
I haven't really watched the NFL to the extent that I probably should have the last little bit, and that's probably my entire motivation for being in your fantasy league is just so, I have a reason to watch a little bit more. I mean, I feel like that's why football pro pools, the OLG gambling is so popular in this country, maybe because we don't necessarily have a team to root for. Unless you just kind of pick a team that's in the NFL, right? Because there's no Canadian team. I mean, we had the Bills that played a game every now and then in Toronto, and they're sort of the closest team, at least here in the eastern area. In Ontario specifically, but there isn't really that team to root for. That's what has kept down my interest in the NFL, except for maybe big games, and it may be like that for other people in this country. And so, this should raise my interest level for sure. But we won't find out till the season starts.
Now, in fantasy, at least in football, quarterbacks, a lot of them are scored roughly the same. There's a couple that are elitist, and you'll end up getting more points than the other. So generally, they're drafted a bit later in the rounds. But with that being said, somebody in our league took Tony Romo, and then we find out that he's out 6 to 8 weeks. Those talks, Trevor, you mentioned that he was going to possibly be ready for opening day, but then the statement came out, and it's all down the drain.
Well, yeah, the coach said that they didn't rule him out for opening day. At least that's what was seen on social media. I didn't actually hear from Jason Garrett, hear an audio clip. So, but that's what was said on social media. And then it seemed right after that, not even within 5 minutes, there was a report out there. The one I paid attention to was from Pro Football Talk that he was out for 6 to 10 weeks with a broken bone in his back or something like that. And multiple reporters ended up picking that up, and it seems like that's the case. All of a sudden it goes from, won't rule him out for the first game of the season to could be gone for about half the season.
Well, I remember that he was out last year as well, and I'm pretty sure that he had to get surgery for something, and it just seemed that there was a constant issue with Tony Romo. There's always an issue with no matter who you are as a Cowboy fan, because it just seems the world wants to hate on you. But generally speaking, it seems that Tony was pretty prone to getting injured and stuff recently, but I believe they signed him to a new longer contract, and I don't know if they're regretting it because he's already injured for this season, but we shall see. Now, moving to baseball. The bringer of rain, Trevor, your favorite, your man crush Monday. Josh Donaldson hitting a hat-trick home run, 3 of them in a single day. Now, I gotta ask the question, does Jays fans now prefer Donaldson to Batista at this point?
It's hard to say no. Or it's hard to say that that they prefer Jose Bautista because, first off, the guy's going to be a free agent in the span of potentially a month, maybe 2 months, depending on if the Blue Jays make the playoffs. So you don't know how much longer you actually have to enjoy Jose Bautista. He's still a terrific hitter. There's no doubting that. He's obviously battled injury a bit this year, and there's no doubt this isn't how he wanted his contract year to go. He wants this big payday at the end of the season. He still might get it. Probably won't be from the Blue Jays. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I mean, Josh Donaldson won the MVP last year. He's the second Blue Jay to win the MVP. That's incredible in and of itself. He's having another MVP type season this year, and to a point, I think just about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, there was a point, and I don't know if it's still the case now, where his numbers were slightly better even than the numbers that he won the MVP with last year, or at least projecting ahead. There's a lot of great players in the American League offensively. You have guys like Jose Altuve, Manny Machado, Mike Trout, and Josh Donaldson's in there for the best in the American League, the best in baseball. And he's been tremendous, and I've been saying it ever since they acquired him for Brett Lawrie and the prospects that they gave up, that this guy is, he's an unbelievable player, and we have seen nothing but him being incredibly awesome for this team. There's going to be a point in time where they have to pay him, and so that'll be interesting to see if that, and we might not find out, but this might influence their decisions with Bautista and Encarnacion come the offseason this year, because this guy is going to be a free agent in about 2 years' time.
Well, that's the next question I was going to ask. Would Jays fans be fine if we signed Donaldson long-term and we lost Edwin Encarnacion and Jose Bautista? Now, with that being said, though, is I feel like Donaldson is able to market himself a heck of a lot better. He talks with the media more, and, I mean, he just seems more personable compared to the other two. Would fans be fine with that if we signed him long-term and we lost the other two?
Well, I mean, if he didn't endear himself to the fans already, I mean, he had that 3-home-run game yesterday, but, I mean, also the whole Tom Ford thing where he got into it with Gibby in the dugout and said post-game that Gibby just wanted a sniff of his cologne, which I didn't even know baseball players wear cologne during games, but I guess he got to smell nice for the teammates in the dugout or something, I don't know, or the opponents. But, Josh Donaldson is a guy that probably should be around here for a while, and you got to pay up for this guy. The thing is, I mean, how many guys do the Blue Jays have that bloomed late? I mean, Josh Donaldson bloomed first with Oakland, and then the Blue Jays were able to pick him up, and he's turned into this MVP player. But, I mean, Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion are also guys that bloomed late, both with the Blue Jays. So it's like, with baseball, you never know when these guys are going to become stars. But, I mean, Jose Bautista and Edwin have been all-star type players for, like, the last 3 years, and Josh Donaldson has been exactly that as well for, like, the last 3 years. I feel like not many casual baseball fans may know that Josh Donaldson was actually a catcher in the big leagues at one point. And he wasn't really much offensively, and he was able to turn it around. And apparently Jose Bautista was the big inspiration for the swing that he currently has, and that was when he was with Oakland. So it's kind of funny how he's on the same team as Bautista, but Josh Donaldson's going to be dangerous, it seems like, for a while still here. And that's why I think you got to keep him over Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion. But what it's going to come down to is how exactly you fill those holes of Bautista and Wright, and with Edwin at first, or DH, whichever one you consider him to be, playing the most. It's going to come down to how exactly you fill those holes, right? Because, I mean, you could have horrible players there, and it seems like it might be a horrible decision. Or you can find good replacements. Joey Votto's a name that's been thrown around a lot from Blue Jays fans. They want Joey Votto to maybe take over for Edwin. And, I mean, Joey Votto's Canadian, right? He's from the Toronto area. It makes a lot of sense. It's an interesting contract, but that may make it work if the Blue Jays want to take that on. And so, yeah, it all depends on who replaces who. And if it is Joey Votto for Edwin Encarnacion, then I think that's a good move.
Finally, the Blue Jays trade for Deano Navarro. He's a player the Jays had. We got rid of him, and we decided we wanted him back because we want his bat for the playoffs, which looks like we're going to get into this year. But that means Josh Tolley, the catcher for R.A. Dickey, seems to be not around anymore, and might mean that R.A. Dickey is going to go to the bullpen, but there's a lot of talks about this, and honestly, it just feels like this is Aaron Sanchez all over again. Oh, geez, what are we going to do with him? Put him in the bullpen, make him a starter, what are we going to do? Just set him down? Like, it's basically the same thing happening over again.
It's not too difficult. Aaron Sanchez will be back with the team, I think it's this week, on Wednesdays when he's supposed to start again. So he'll be back with the team. That was just to skip a start and then do your regular 5-man rotation. R.A. Dickey's going to be in the rotation until the end of the season. The whole will he be on the playoff roster thing is an interesting thing, especially now that they have Navarro and you have Liriano now in that rotation. You have a guy that could potentially start there. Although I hear Liriano to the bullpen because Cecil and Loop have struggled a little bit. If you want that lefty in there, you might have to go Liriano. You don't necessarily need a lefty, but it almost feels strange to be in the playoffs and have a bullpen without a lefty. But you do have guys that throw right-handed that get left-handers out, right? So you can use that. But, R.A. Dickey is a guy that can't really pitch out of the bullpen, I feel like, because he needs that catcher to personally catch him. A lot of people hate on Josh Tully and his defense. I want to see them go out there and try to catch that knuckleball, because it's one of the hardest things in baseball. If Tully does have to clear through waivers, it'll be interesting to see if Boston tries to pick him up, because they're in competition with the Blue Jays, and so maybe they don't want Tully to get back to the Blue Jays. Just because that's what the Blue Jays want, and the Boston Red Sox are also the home to the only other knuckleballer in the big leagues, and Steven Wright, and they've been looking for a catcher for him pretty much all season, because Ryan Hannigan, believe it or not, has done a worse job than Josh Tully, as much as Blue Jays fans want to hate on Josh Tully trying to catch a knuckleball this year. So, obviously Tully's not a lot offensively. He's not going to be a lot offensively, but I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Tully found his way back with the Blue Jays for the expanded rosters in September, and that's obviously where he'd fit in. He wouldn't be on the 25-man, but he'd be on the expanded roster for September and still be able to catch R.A. Dickey, and they'll have Navarro on that roster as well, and obviously Russell Martin. So they'll have a lot of possible catchers, plus Eric Kratz, a former Blue Jays, a guy that they signed just a couple months ago, and he's a guy that they also have as an option as well. If Tully ends up getting picked up by somebody else and not being a Blue Jay anymore, you could potentially use Eric Kratz to catch R.A. Dickey, because they don't want Russell Martin to get beat up anymore like he did last year trying to catch that knuckleball.
That's it for this edition of BSS Sports. So make sure to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at BSS Sports. We're archiving on YouTube at BSS Productions. If you want to listen back to some of our older episodes, for Trevor Struthers and myself, Steven Schill, we'll get in touch next month.